Well, I think the most important thing is that it was once again only the Russians who were the significant country to veto this. Even the Chinese, who are normally their ally, abstained. And I think the pressure on them is now very considerable. And I hope that they recognise that. Today, the crucial development is that it's been clear that this was either sarin or a sarin-like substance that was used in this gas attack at Khan Sheikhoun, 6:30 in the morning on April the 4th. And the question for the Russians, therefore, is how can they continue to support a regime that is willing to gas its own people with weapons that should have been banned 100 years ago. I would like to see the Russians acknowledging that and beginning the process of detaching themselves from the Assad regime that is toxic. And I think it's worth us all thinking, why would the Assad regime, why would those soldiers, that army, use chemical weapons against their own people? And the answer is, of course, those weapons are particularly terrifying. They scare the population. Gas is a very scary thing to inflict. And so what is really happening here is that the Russians, who say they want to join in the war on terror, are actually collaborating with Assad, who is the biggest terrorist of all. And I think they've got to recognise that, to engage with a real political process, a transition away from the Assad regime, and a new start for Syria. I think that what we've had today, the most important thing is the revelation that this was indeed sarin or a sarin-like substance, which makes it almost beyond doubt that the regime was responsible. So what begins, therefore, with the Office for the Prevention of Chemical Weapons is an investigative trail into who did it, and there's an awful lot of information already building up. The picture is very clear. And that evidential trail will lead to, I've no doubt, to some individuals, whether in the Syrian regime or indeed possibly Russian officers who are themselves involved in the coordination of the Syrian effort. And so what I say to all our friends who think about whether or not to impose sanctions on those individuals, and by the way, there's a large measure of support for that in the G7, is, how would you not impose sanctions on individuals who've been responsible for gassing innocent children? These weren't terrorists, these were children.